Alright, today's episode of The Owl House is a little bit interesting. I've had a lot to talk about in most of the recent Owl House episodes that I've talked about. Even ones that I didn't really feel like I was going to have a lot to talk about in to start with, like the anthology one. I had a lot more to say in that review than I thought I was originally. This one, not so much. Something Ventured, Someone Framed, I believe is the title of this one. Isn't a bad episode by any stretch. I like it a lot, actually. But there's not a lot to say about it. It's mostly just set up for later stuff, and then just action set pieces that are fine, but they're there to fill out the episode, right? As soon as I started recording, my dogs decided they were going to stand up right now and start moving around and making noise. You probably can't even hear them. They're not making that much noise. I just know the sounds they make. I'm not going to say hi to them either, because then they'll come over here. What was I saying? Right, the plot of this episode. In this episode, a new character, Bartholomew, I think was his name. I vaguely remember him showing up again later, but also not. I didn't particularly like him very much, even as an antagonist. So that's probably why. He starts at Hexside, and he was the head of the Human Appreciation Society, his old school, apparently. And he wants to be the head of the Human Appreciation Society at Hexside as well, but that's Gus's position. So this whole episode, the main driving force of the A-plot is that Gus is trying to prevent this new kid from taking his position as club president using fake human items that he created himself. It's not fun or whatever, it's dumb. Like there's really no point to any of it. Like Gus's plan to sneak loose into the school in spite of the ban that's still in place against her in order to verify that the items aren't real is the main driving force of the conflict in this episode. But it's not really anything special. Like, yeah, it's helpful for the resolution of the B-plot that Luce is already here in the school doing stuff while that's happening. But literally anything else could have been happening alongside the B-plot of this episode, and it would have had just as much impact on things overall. The only good thing to come out of it is that prior to the conclusion of the B-plot, which is that Luz is enrolled in Hexside, this episode does give us a bit more of an idea of the structure of the school, outside of just, like, the fact that there are various different paths that people can take. Gus takes Luz on something of a tour, and we do see stuff happening around the school. And, like, the A-plot does culminate in a big action climax where we find out that detention here is getting stuck in a glowing pod and like brain manipulated into being a better student. But at the same time, it's not nearly as nefarious as it seems to be, because we know people can be sent to detention multiple times. So really, being put in the brain pod and repeating, "I will be a good student," or whatever specifically they said, is really just the equivalent of having a kid sit in a boring room and write lines. It just looks really horrifying. So it's not even really that exciting in that manner. I don't hate it, but I definitely could love it a lot more too. The B-plot is what's far more interesting here. The driving force of that is that Ida is growing as a person and recognizes that Luz needs a more formal education on top of the more sporadic education that she can give her, so she wants to get Luz enrolled in the school. And so Ida goes to the school to talk to the principal, who, on rewatching the show, comes across as a much cooler guy than I realized the first time, but I'll talk about that in a second. She goes to talk to the principal and try to get the ban lifted and Luz enrolled, and he stipulates that, while he agrees that of course her apprentice needs a more formal education, because it's Ida, he'll only enroll Luz if Ida can repair all of the horrible things that she did as the chaotic prankster student that she was back when she went there. And she has a huge file, and I love Ida's reaction that she thought it would be bigger. It's just so good. The interactions between these two are very good here, because you can tell that, what's his name, Principal Bump, I think, you can tell he's a bit of a rebel himself. It's just he really feels like Ida takes things too far. But they do kind of understand each other, and it's made pretty apparent that he's doing this to try to test how serious she is about this, how much she cares about Luz getting this education. And she passes the test by fixing everything in that file. And even though the fact that Luz was there without permission before the ban was lifted almost gets all of that reversed, it's fine because Gus confesses to his role in it, and things are good by the end. And Ida even makes a point of asking Principal Bump to make sure he doesn't mention any of this to the Emperor's Coven, because she's still on the run, and Luz could be used as leverage against her. And this is where he comes off as a much cooler guy than I realized. Like, it's unclear how much the average citizen knows about how sinister Belos and his coven actually are. It really does seem like they have been propagandized into thinking that he's a good person, which he's clearly not. But Belos does say outright that he won't give them up, and Ida trusts him. And I thought that was a cool moment. But really the stuff with Ida and seeing how dedicated she was to doing what was right for Luz, even if it's not what she would personally want for someone herself, and seeing all the little cutaway antics that went along with her trying to undo all the damage that she had done in the past, that was the main highlight of the episode. That's what you're coming to this episode to see. And they definitely knew that, because the episode ends off with old snapshots of Ida doing those chaotic pranks in the first place. It's a lot of fun. That said, this episode does set up more than it resolves. It is setting a new status quo for the show, and I appreciate that they gave us an entire episode doing that. I just wish that the other half of the episode had been a little more interesting to me. But I'm sure there are a lot of people who really liked that A-plot. So if you have seen Something Ventured, Someone Framed, what did you think about it? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, you might as well like the video, share it with anyone else you think might enjoy my content, subscribe if you haven't. I'm trying to get myself out there, and I'd really appreciate it if you guys could help. You can also check out my social medias. Links to those will be in the video description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.